20 controversial celebrity deaths that still haunt Hollywood. They were stars who shine brightly on the silver screen, legends who topped the charts, and icons who defined generations. But their final chapters weren't written in spotlights and applause. They ended in mystery, controversy, and questions that have lingered for decades. 30 Hollywood deaths that weren't just tragic losses, but puzzling enigmas that continue to haunt Tinseltown to this day. Now let's examine these 20 controversial deaths one by one, starting with some of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. 1. Marilyn Monroe. In the early hours of August 5, 1962, the world lost its most famous blonde bombshell. Marilyn Monroe was found in her Brentwood home with an empty bottle of sleeping pills nearby. The official ruling, she did it herself, but from the moment the news broke, the circumstances surrounding her death raised eyebrows. Monroe had been making phone calls until shortly before her death, with none suggesting dark intentions. Her housekeeper's story changed multiple times regarding when she discovered the body. More suspiciously, despite being found face down, lividity, the pooling of blood after death, indicated she had died in a different position and been moved. The controversies only deepened with Monroe's connections to powerful men. In the months before her death, she had allegedly been involved with both President John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert. Some theories suggest she was silenced to prevent her from revealing state secrets or embarrassing details about the Kennedy family. Adding fuel to the conspiracy fire, her house had been wiretapped, and several hours passed between when she was believed to have died and when police were called. Most troublingly, her death records have been altered, and tissue samples taken during her autopsy mysteriously disappeared before toxicology tests could be completed. Decades later, we're left with more questions than answers. Was it self-harm driven by her well-documented depression, an accidental overdose, or was Monroe, as some believe, the victim of a sophisticated murder designed to look like she did it to herself? Her death remains perhaps Hollywood's most enduring mystery, a case that continues to inspire books, documentaries, and endless speculation. 2. George Reeves. George Reeves soared into living rooms across America as the Man of Steel in the 1950s television series Adventures of Superman. But on June 16, 1959, he was found dead from a gunshot wound to the head in his Benedict Canyon home, a death quickly ruled self-inflicted despite troubling inconsistencies that have kept conspiracy theories alive for over 6 decades. The official story claimed that Reeves, depressed over his faltering career and typecast as Superman, took his own life during a late-night gathering with friends. But the physical evidence told a different tale. There were no powder burns on Reeves's skin, suggesting the gun was fired from a distance rather than pressed against his head as typically seen in self-harm. Even more puzzling, investigators found bullet holes in the floor, evidence of additional shots that were never adequately explained. Reeves's personal life added more layers of intrigue. He had been involved in a complicated love triangle between his fiancée Leonore Lemon and his former lover Tony Mannix, who was married to Eddie Mannix, a powerful MGM executive with alleged mob connections. Some theories suggest Reeves was killed on orders from the jealous and vengeful Eddie Mannix, while others point to a drunken accident covered up by witnesses to avoid scandal. Perhaps most suspicious was the behavior of those present that night. According to reports, after hearing the fatal gunshot, Reeves's house guests waited up to 45 minutes before calling police, ample time to alter the scene or construct a story. Unlike Superman, George Reeves wasn't bulletproof, but the truth about his death seems to be resistant to all attempts to uncover what really happened on that summer night in 1959. 3. Natalie Wood. Few Hollywood deaths have generated as much sustained speculation as that of Natalie Wood, who drowned during a weekend yacht trip off California's Catalina Island on November 29, 1981. The 3-time Oscar nominee, known for classics like Rebel Without a Cause and West Side Story, was initially said to have accidentally fallen overboard while attempting to secure a dinghy that was banging against the hull of the yacht, but the circumstances surrounding her drowning never added up. Wood was famously terrified of dark water and couldn't swim. She had been drinking heavily that night and was found wearing a nightgown, down jacket, and socks, hardly appropriate attire for someone voluntarily entering the water. Most suspiciously, Wood had been aboard the yacht with only 3 other people: her husband Robert Wagner, actor Christopher Walken, and the boat's captain Dennis Davern. Wagner admitted to arguing with Wood that night, with Davern later claiming the couple had a heated fight before she disappeared. For nearly 4 decades, Wagner maintained that he had no idea what happened to his wife. However, in 2011, the case was reopened when Davern changed his story. claiming that Wagner was responsible for Wood's death. In 2018, investigators named Wagner a person of interest, noting his accounts had shifted over the years and that he refused to speak with detectives after the case was reopened. Wood's body was found floating face down about a mile from the yacht, with unexplained bruises on her body that some experts have suggested indicated injuries before she entered the water. The Los Angeles County Coroner's Office amended her death certificate in 2012, changing the manner of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. Nearly half a century later, the full truth of what happened on the yacht Splendor that Thanksgiving weekend remains elusive, with the only three people who might know the complete story either unwilling or unable to provide definitive answers. 4. Bruce Lee. When Bruce Lee died suddenly at the age of 32 on July 20th, 1973, the martial arts superstar was on the verge of international breakthrough with the upcoming release of Enter the Dragon. His mysterious death in Hong Kong, officially attributed to cerebral edema, swelling of the brain, spawned decades of conspiracy theories ranging from assassination by triad gangsters to a family curse. According to the official account, Lee complained of a headache, took a painkiller provided by actress Betty Ting Pei at her apartment, laid down for a nap, and never woke up. An autopsy revealed his brain had swollen by about 13%, and the coroner concluded he had an unusual reaction to an ingredient in the painkiller Equagesic. But many questioned this explanation. Lee's extraordinary fitness made his sudden death seem implausible to fans and family. Some suspected he was poisoned by rivals in the Hong Kong film industry who resented his success. Others pointed to his recent collapse during the filming of Enter the Dragon as evidence of an underlying health condition. Adding to the mystery was the Hong Kong media's initial coverage, which attempted to hide the fact that Lee died in another woman's apartment to protect his reputation. This early obfuscation only fueled speculation that other facts were being concealed. Perhaps most eerily, Lee's son Brandon would die under similarly mysterious circumstances 20 years later during the filming of The Crow, cementing in many minds the notion of a Lee family curse. While modern medical experts have suggested that Lee may have died from heat stroke or an undiagnosed epilepsy condition, half a century later, his premature death remains one of Hollywood's most debated endings, shrouded in cultural mythology and lingering questions. 5. Sharon Tate. On August 9, 1969, Hollywood was forever changed when 8 months pregnant actress Sharon Tate and 4 others were brutally murdered in her Los Angeles home. The savagery of the killings, which included multiple stab wounds, the word pig written in blood on the front door, and a horrific tableau of bodies, shocked the nation and brought an abrupt end to the idealistic peace and love era of the 1960s. While this case was eventually solved, Charles Manson and his followers were convicted of the murders, the controversy surrounding it has never fully subsided. Questions persist about the motive, with prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi's helter-skelter theory that Manson ordered the killings to trigger an apocalyptic race war, disputed by some investigators who believe the murders were connected to drug deals gone wrong or meant to send a message to the home's previous occupant, music producer Terry Melcher. Even more controversially, some researchers have questioned whether Manson was manipulated by shadowy government forces conducting mind control experiments. Former Manson family member Susan Atkins later claimed they were under the influence of drugs and brainwashing techniques when they committed the murders. The aftermath saw further tragedy. Tate's husband, director Roman Polanski, was in London at the time of the murders. His already controversial career took an even darker turn in 1977 when he fled the United States after pleading guilty to unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor, forever linking the Tate murder to ongoing debates about separating art from artists. The murders have been revisited countless times in popular culture, most recently in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which imagined an alternate history where Tate survived. The continued fascination with this case reflects how deeply it scarred the American psyche and Hollywood's sense of security. 6. John Lennon. On December 8, 1980, outside the Dakota apartment building in New York City, former Beatle John Lennon was shot 4 times in the back by Mark David Chapman, a disturbed fan who had obtained Lennon's autograph earlier that same day. While the basic facts of Lennon's murder aren't disputed, conspiracy theories have swirled for decades about whether Chapman was a programmed assassin deployed by government agencies threatened by Lennon's peace activism and influence. Chapman himself claimed he was motivated by a desire for notoriety and a bizarre obsession with J.D. Salinger's novel The Catcher in the Rye, even reading from the book while waiting for police after the shooting. Yet his calm demeanor after the murder, along with gaps in his timeline and memory, have fueled suspicions. Some researchers point to Lennon's FBI file, 371 pages compiled during the Nixon administration when Lennon was considered a threat due to his anti-war activism. Conspiracy theorists suggest Chapman was subjected to mind control techniques similar to those allegedly developed in the CIA's MK-Ultra program, programmed to eliminate a figure deemed dangerous to establishment interests. Adding to these theories was Chapman's unusual behavior before the murder, including a mysterious trip to Hawaii and his inexplicable financial resources despite being unemployed. Some observers noted he appeared to be in a trance-like state following the shooting. While most experts dismiss these conspiracies, pointing to Chapman's documented mental illness and clear motive, the theories persist. A reflection of both the immense cultural loss Lennon's death represented and the era's growing distrust of government institutions following Watergate and other scandals. Lennon's death ended hopes for a Beatles reunion and silenced one of music's most powerful voices for peace and social change, making his murder not just a celebrity death, but a pivotal moment in cultural history. 7. Tupac Shakur. On September 7, 1996, rap icon Tupac Shakur was shot 4 times in a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas following a Mike Tyson boxing match. He died 6 days later at age 25, and despite the public nature of the crime on a busy strip, no one has ever been charged with his murder, a fact that has spawned countless conspiracy theories and a lingering sense that justice was deliberately obstructed. The most prevalent theory connects Tupac's death to the infamous East Coast-West Coast hip-hop rivalry of the 1990s. Earlier that night, casino security cameras captured Tupac and associates, including Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight, assaulting Crips gang member Orlando Anderson in the MGM Grand Lobby, potentially providing a motive for retaliation. However, alternative theories abound. Some believe Shakur faked his death and is living in Cuba, pointing to the suspicious fact that he took the stage name Machiavelli after Niccolo Machiavelli, who allegedly advocated faking one's death to fool enemies. Others claim the FBI or police were involved, noting Tupac's family had Black Panther connections that had made them targets of government surveillance. Adding fuel to these speculations was the murder of his rival, Christopher Notorious B.I.G. Wallace just 6 months later in a similar drive-by shooting, killings that remain connected in the public imagination despite never being officially linked by investigators. Most troublingly, investigations into both murders have been plagued by allegations of police corruption and negligence. Former LAPD detective Russell Poole claimed that Death Row Records employed off-duty police officers who may have been involved in a cover-up while the Las Vegas police were criticized for their failure to pursue promising leads. Tupac's cultural influence has only grown since his death, with posthumous album releases, hologram performances, and his enduring status as a hip-hop martyr, ensuring that interest in solving his murder remains intense nearly 3 decades later. When Soundgarden frontman Chris Cornell was found dead in his Detroit hotel room bathroom on May 18, 2017, the news sent shockwaves through the music world. The Wayne County Medical Examiner quickly ruled his death a self-inflicted by hanging, but family, friends, and fans immediately questioned whether the 52-year-old rock legend would have taken his own life, especially just hours after performing a high-energy concert. Cornell's widow, Vicky, has been particularly vocal in challenging the self-harm ruling. She noted that Chris had taken Ativan, an anti-anxiety medication known to occasionally cause self-harm thoughts, and suggested he may have taken too much, impairing his judgment. In phone conversations shortly before his death, she reported he sounded different, slurring his words and repeatedly saying, "I am just tired." Adding to the suspicions were the unusual injuries found during Cornell's autopsy, including 9 broken ribs and a head wound. Injuries some experts considered atypical for self-harm by hanging. The rapid removal of the crime scene tape and the quick ruling of it being self-inflicted before toxicology reports were complete further fueled concerns about a rushed investigation. Some fans have pointed to Cornell's activism against child trafficking through his foundation as a possible motive for murder, though no evidence supports this particular theory. Cornell had publicly battled addiction and depression for years, but had been sober since 2003 and had spoken optimistically about future projects in interviews conducted shortly before his death. He had even discussed Soundgarden's next album with his bandmates after the Detroit show. Like his friend Chester Bennington of Linkin Park, who died by self-harm on Cornell's birthday just 2 months later, Cornell's death highlights the often invisible struggles of those battling depression, as well as the difficulty in accepting that someone who appeared to have overcome their demons could suddenly succumb to them. 9. Chester Bennington. On July 20th, 2017, what would have been his friend Chris Cornell's 53rd birthday, Lincoln Park frontman Chester Bennington was found dead at his California home. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled his death a suicide by hanging, but the timing and circumstances immediately sparked questions among fans and some family members. The parallels with Cornell's death 2 months earlier were eerie. Both men were found hanging, both had substances in their system, Bennington had alcohol in his bloodstream, and both deaths were quickly ruled self-inflicted. These similarities, combined with both men's outspoken stances against child abuse, led to conspiracy theories that they were murdered to silence them, though no evidence supports these claims. Bennington's widow, Talinda, initially accepted the suicide ruling, but later expressed that she believed Chester wouldn't have deliberately left his 6 children fatherless. She noted that just days before his death, he was making plans for the future, including a family vacation and business collaborations. Adding to the controversy was security camera footage from Bennington's home, which allegedly malfunctioned during the critical hours surrounding his death. This technical failure, while not uncommon with home security systems, became a focal point for those questioning the official narrative. In the years preceding his death, Bennington had openly discussed his struggles with depression, substance abuse, and childhood sexual abuse. He had also been deeply affected by Cornell's suicide, performing Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah at his funeral. Whether his death was the result of a long battle with depression or more complex factors, Bennington's self-harm highlighted the devastating impact of mental health struggles and the sometimes deceptive nature of public personas. Someone who could electrify stadiums with his powerful voice was privately fighting battles that even those closest to him couldn't fully comprehend. 10. Brittany Murphy. When 32-year-old actress Brittany Murphy collapsed in her Hollywood Hills bathroom on December 20th, 2009, fans were shocked by the sudden loss of the vibrant star known for films like Clueless and Girl Interrupted. The Los Angeles County coroner's conclusion that she died of pneumonia, anemia, and multiple drug intoxication from over-the-counter and prescription medications raised more questions than it answered. The mystery deepened when Murphy's husband, Simon Monjack, died just 5 months later in the same house from strikingly similar causes, acute pneumonia and severe anemia. This extraordinary coincidence led to theories ranging from toxic mold in their home to deliberate poisoning. In 2013, an independent toxicology report commissioned by Murphy's father found high levels of heavy metals in her hair, suggesting potential poisoning. However, these findings were disputed by medical experts who noted that hair testing can be unreliable and contaminated by common hair treatments. Adding another layer of intrigue were reports that before their deaths, Murphy and Monjack believed they were under surveillance, with helicopters flying over their home and their phones being tapped. According to a posthumously published Hollywood Reporter article, the couple had been connected to whistleblower Julia Davis, who had made enemies within the Department of Homeland Security, potentially making Murphy and Monjack targets for harassment. Murphy's mother, Sharon, who lived with the couple, has consistently maintained that toxic mold killed her daughter and son-in-law, though this theory was rejected by the coroner's office after testing. The simultaneous presence of multiple plausible explanations, natural illness, toxic exposure, drug interactions, and even the specter of foul play has kept Murphy's case open in the court of public opinion, representing how a celebrity death can become a Rorschach test for our cultural anxieties and suspicions. 11. Heath Ledger. When 28-year-old actor Heath Ledger was found dead in his Manhattan apartment on January 22, 2008, the world lost one of its most promising talents just as he was reaching new creative heights with his soon-to-be legendary performance as the Joker in The Dark Knight. The New York City medical examiner ruled his death an accidental overdose from a combination of prescription medications including painkillers, anti-anxiety drugs, and sleeping pills. However, the circumstances surrounding his death spawned numerous questions and conspiracy theories. Most notably, some pointed to the psychological toll of playing the Joker, with rumors that Ledger had suffered from insomnia and disturbing thoughts while inhabiting the deranged character. His now famous Joker diary, containing dark writings and images he collected during preparation for the role, fueled speculation that the part had somehow contributed to his death. Adding to the controversy was the initial response to finding his body. Mary-Kate Olsen, whom Ledger had been dating, was called multiple times by the masseuse who discovered him, even before emergency services officials were contacted. Olson then dispatched private security guards to the apartment, raising questions about possible cleanup of the scene before authorities arrived. Additionally, contradictory reports emerged about whether Ledger was already dead when found or if he was still breathing, creating confusion about whether a more prompt emergency response might have saved him. While most evidence supports the accidental overdose ruling, the premature loss of such a gifted actor at the peak of his artistic powers, with his definitive performance as the Joker released posthumously, has ensured that his death remains a subject of speculation and mythology within Hollywood lore. 12. Anna Nicole Smith. Former Playboy model and reality TV star Anna Nicole Smith's death on February 8, 2007 was as controversy-laden as her tabloid-filled life. Found unresponsive in her Florida hotel room, the 39-year-old died from an accidental overdose involving at least 9 different medications, a tragic end that came just 5 months after the death of her 20-year-old son Daniel from a similar drug cocktail, and just days after the birth of her daughter Danny Lynn. The circumstances surrounding Smith's death set off a chain of legal battles and accusations. Her longtime attorney and companion Howard K. Stern, along with 2 doctors, faced charges relating to conspiring to furnish drugs to an addict, though most charges were eventually dismissed or overturned on appeal. Adding to the controversy was the question of Danny Lynn's paternity, with multiple men claiming to be the father amid speculation about potential inheritance of the fortune Smith had been fighting to receive from her late husband, billionaire J. Howard Marshall II. DNA testing eventually confirmed photographer Larry Burkhead was Danny Lynn's father. Some conspiracy theories have suggested Smith was deliberately overdosed to prevent her from eventually receiving the Marshall inheritance, which had been tied up in courts for years. Others pointed to the strange coincidence of both mother and son dying from similar drug combinations within months of each other. Smith's death represented the dark culmination of a life marked by both tremendous opportunity and exploitation. From her early days as a small-town girl from Texas to her transformation into a model, actress, and tabloid fixture, Smith's tragic trajectory embodied the double-edged sword of fame, particularly for women valued primarily for their physical appearance. 13. Prince. When legendary musician Prince was found unresponsive in an elevator at his Paisley Park estate on April 21, 2016, the world lost one of its most innovative and prolific artists. The autopsy revealed he died from an accidental overdose of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 times more potent than heroin, but the circumstances leading to his death raised troubling questions about prescription drug practices and the isolation that often accompanies celebrity. What makes Prince's death particularly controversial is that this fiercely health-conscious artist, known for his vegetarianism and abstention from recreational drugs and alcohol, had been secretly battling chronic pain and opioid dependency. Just 6 days before his death, Prince's plane had made an emergency landing when he overdosed on the way home from a concert, yet this crisis didn't result in the intervention that might have saved his life. The investigation revealed Prince had no prescriptions in his name, instead obtaining pills through others to maintain privacy, a common practice among celebrities that often circumvents proper medical oversight. Pills found at Paisley Park were mislabeled, with some containing fentanyl when marked as standard-strength hydrocodone. Multiple theories emerged about how Prince obtained the fatal fentanyl. Some suggested he didn't know he was taking such a powerful opioid, while others pointed to the difficulty someone of his fame would have in seeking treatment for addiction. No charges were filed against any individual for providing the fatal drugs, leaving a sense of justice denied. Adding to the controversy was the handling of Prince's massive estate and unreleased music vault, with family conflicts emerging in the absence of a will. For an artist who had fought so publicly for ownership of his work during his lifetime, the posthumous battle over his legacy added another layer of tragedy to his untimely death. 14. Michael Jackson. The sudden death of Michael Jackson on June 25, 2009 sent shockwaves around the globe and sparked one of the most controversial celebrity death investigations in history. The 50-year-old king of pop suffered cardiac arrest at his rented Los Angeles mansion while preparing for his This Is It comeback tour, with the coroner later determining he died from acute propofol intoxication combined with benzodiazepines, powerful sedatives administered by his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray. The ensuing investigation revealed a troubling picture of medical ethics violations. Murray was administering propofol, a surgical anesthetic never meant for home use, use as a sleep aid, monitoring Jackson inadequately, and failing to properly respond when he found the star unresponsive. Murray was eventually convicted of involuntary manslaughter and served 2 years of a 4-year sentence. However, many questions persist about who bears ultimate responsibility for Jackson's death. Some argue that Murray was a scapegoat for a system that enabled Jackson's prescription drug dependency, pointing to evidence that multiple doctors had prescribed medications to Jackson under various aliases over the years. Others suggest that AEG Live, the promoter of Jackson's planned comeback tour, pressured the physically and mentally exhausted star to perform despite clear signs he was in no condition to do so. A wrongful death lawsuit filed by the Jackson family against AEG was ultimately unsuccessful, but raised important questions about the exploitation of vulnerable celebrities. Jackson's death also reignited controversies about his life, from his changing appearance to the child sexual abuse allegations that had damaged his career. The complex legacy of an undeniably brilliant artist whose personal life remained shrouded in mystery and controversy continues to be debated, with posthumous accusations adding new dimensions to an already complicated public memory. 15. Whitney Houston. When Whitney Houston was found unconscious in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel on February 11, 2012, the music world lost one of its most magnificent voices. The Los Angeles County coroner ruled that the 48-year-old singer died from accidental drowning, with heart disease and cocaine use listed as contributing factors. But many aspects of Houston's final hours continue to generate questions and controversy. Perhaps most disturbing was the scene at the hotel. While Houston lay dead in her suite, the pre-Grammy party hosted by her mentor Clive Davis continued in the same hotel, just floors below, a decision many found callous and disrespectful. Additionally, items reportedly went missing from Houston's room before police arrived, suggesting possible evidence tampering. Added another tragic dimension when she was found unconscious in a bathtub under eerily similar circumstances almost exactly 3 years later, eventually dying after months in a coma. This devastating parallel fueled conspiracy theories, with some suggesting both deaths involve foul play rather than accidents. Houston's ex-husband, Bobby Brown, has expressed beliefs that both Whitney and their daughter were victims of drug-related homicides rather than accidents, though he has not presented evidence supporting these claims. Medical experts have pointed out that the combination of drugs in Houston's system, including cocaine, Xanax, Benadryl, and marijuana, would have likely caused severe disorientation, possibly explaining how she slipped underwater without attempting to save herself. Houston's death highlighted the devastating toll of addiction, even for those with seemingly unlimited resources and support. It also underscored how the entertainment industry often continues the show must go on mentality even in the face of tragedy, a controversial aspect of a business that has often prioritized profits over the well-being of its biggest stars. 16. Kurt Cobain. The discovery of Kurt Cobain's body at his Seattle home on April 8, 1994, marked the end of one of rock's most influential voices and the beginning of decades of controversy and conspiracy theories. The 27-year-old Nirvana frontman died from a shotgun wound to the head, with the Seattle Police Department quickly ruling his death as self-inflicted based on a note found at the scene and Cobain's history of depression and drug use. However, questions about the circumstances of Cobain's death emerged almost immediately. The lethal dose of heroin found in his bloodstream, 3 times what would typically be fatal even for a habitual user, raised doubts about whether he could have physically manipulated a shotgun after injecting such a massive quantity. The positioning of the gun, the lack of fingerprints on the weapon, and alleged inconsistencies in the note have fueled alternative theories. Private investigator Tom Grant, hired by Cobain's wife Courtney Love to find Kurt days before his body was discovered, became convinced that Cobain was murdered. Grant has spent decades arguing that Love herself may have been involved, pointing to potential financial motives and what he characterizes as suspicious behavior. Love has vehemently denied these accusations, and no charges have ever been filed. The Seattle Police Department has periodically reviewed the case, most recently in 2014 upon the 20th anniversary of Cobain's death, but has consistently maintained that the evidence supports their original self-harm determination. Cobain's death at the height of Nirvana's success cemented his status as a rock martyr and entry into the notorious 27 Club of musicians who died at that age. The continuing controversy around his final days reflects both his cultural significance and the natural difficulty in accepting that someone with such creative brilliance could choose to end his own life. Private investigator Tom Grant, hired by Cobain's wife Courtney Love to find Kurt days before his body was discovered, became convinced that Cobain was murdered. Grant has spent decades arguing that Love herself may have been involved, pointing to potential financial motives and what he characterizes as suspicious behavior. Love has vehemently denied these accusations, and no charges have ever been filed. The Seattle Police Department has periodically reviewed the case, most recently in 2014 upon the 20th anniversary of Cobain's death, but has consistently maintained that the evidence supports their original self-harm determination. Cobain's death at the height of Nirvana's success cemented his status as a rock martyr and entry into the notorious 27 Club of musicians who died at that age. The continuing controversy around his final days reflects both his cultural significance and the natural difficulty in accepting that someone with such creative brilliance could choose to end his own life. 17. Amy Winehouse. Amy Winehouse's death on July 23, 2011, was as tragic as it seemed inevitable after years of public struggles with substance abuse. The 27-year-old British soul singer was found deceased in her London home with a blood alcohol level more than 5 times the legal driving limit. The coroner ruled her death by misadventure, a result of alcohol poisoning after periods of abstinence and relapse. Her father, Mitch Winehouse, has been particularly vocal about his belief that Amy was actually recovering from addiction at the time of her death, claiming she had been clean of drugs for 3 years and was making progress in battling alcoholism. He suggested her death resulted from a seizure brought on by detoxing too quickly without proper medical supervision. Adding to the controversy was the behavior of some professionals in her life. Her physician, Dr. Christina Romete, had seen Winehouse the night before she died, but didn't consider her as requiring hospitalization despite her recent relapse. Some critics have suggested the financial incentives of keeping a troubled star working led to inadequate care and protection. Like Kurt Cobain and Jim Morrison before her, Winehouse's death at age 27 added her to the 27 Club, talented musicians whose lives ended at that specific age, often due to substance abuse or mental health issues. Her death highlighted the devastating intersection of addiction, fame, and the music industry's history of exploiting rather than protecting its most vulnerable artists. 18. Philip Seymour Hoffman. When Philip Seymour Hoffman was found dead in his Manhattan apartment bathroom on February 2, 2014, with a needle still in his arm, the theater and film worlds lost one of their most respected actors. The New York City Medical Examiner ruled that the 46-year-old Oscar winner died from an acute mixed drug intoxication, including heroin, cocaine, benzodiazepines, and amphetamines. In the months before his death, however, Hoffman had relapsed. He had recently separated from his longtime partner, costume designer Mimi O'Donnell, with whom he had 3 children, and moved into the apartment where he would eventually be found dead. Friends reported he had appeared disheveled and exhausted at the Sundance Film Festival just 2 weeks before his death. The police investigation revealed that Hoffman had withdrawn $1,200 from an ATM the night before his death, presumably to purchase drugs. The particular batch of heroin found in his apartment was suspected to be part of a dangerously potent supply circulating in the East Coast at the time, linked to numerous overdoses. 19. Paul Walker. The fiery car crash that killed actor Paul Walker on November 30, 2013, was laced with tragic irony given his starring role in the Fast and Furious franchise, which celebrated high-speed driving. The 40-year-old actor was a passenger in a Porsche Carrera GT, driven by his friend Roger Rodas, when the vehicle spun out of control on a Santa Clarita, California street, struck a concrete lamppost and tree, and burst into flames, killing both men instantly. Although investigators determined excessive speed, 80 to 93 miles per hour in a 45 miles per hour zone, was the primary cause of the crash, controversy emerged around several aspects of the accident. The Porsche Carrera GT had a reputation as a notoriously difficult car to handle, with automotive experts including Jay Leno having warned about its tendency to oversteer. This led Walker's daughter to file a wrongful death lawsuit against Porsche, claiming design flaws contributed to her father's death. Additionally, rumors circulated that Walker and Rodas may have been involved in street racing at the time of the crash, though police found no evidence supporting this theory. Some conspiracy theorists even suggested Walker might have been killed because of his charity work in disaster zones, where he allegedly discovered sensitive information, though these claims lack credible evidence. Walker's death occurred during a break in filming Furious 7, leading to significant script changes and the use of his brothers as stand-ins to complete his scenes, an early use of CGI technology to digitally recreate a deceased actor's appearance that raised ethical questions about posthumous performances that continue to this day. 20. Robin Williams. The self-harm of beloved actor and comedian Robin Williams on August 11, 2014, stunned the world and initially sparked confusion about why someone who brought so much joy to others would take his own life. The 63-year-old was found hanged in his Paradise Cay, California home, with the Marin County Sheriff's Office confirming he died from asphyxia due to hanging. While the manner of death was clear, controversy emerged around Williams' mental state and medical condition in his final months. Initially, reports focused on his history of depression and substance abuse struggles, but his widow Susan Schneider Williams later revealed that he had been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, information he had shared with few people. The plot thickened when an autopsy revealed Williams had actually been suffering from Lewy body dementia. This revelation transformed the narrative around Williams' self-harm from a story about depression to one about a man facing a devastating neurological disease that was rapidly eroding his cognitive abilities. Schneider Williams has suggested that Robin may have taken his life not due to depression, but because he was losing his battle with a condition that was stealing his identity and abilities. Some medical experts have questioned whether earlier and accurate diagnosis might have helped Williams better understand and cope with his condition. Though Lewy body dementia has no cure and progressively worsens over time, Williams' death highlighted the complexity of self-harm, the inadequacies in diagnosing certain neurological conditions, and the often hidden suffering of those who present a cheerful facade to the world. A tragic reminder that those who make us laugh the most may sometimes be fighting the hardest battles in private. I hope this journey through Hollywood's most enduring mysteries has given you new insights into these iconic figures whose talents touched millions, but whose final chapters remain shrouded in controversy. Perhaps it's also sparked your curiosity to learn more about the complex lives behind the legendary names. If you found this exploration fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into Hollywood history. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Which of these cases surprised you most? Are there other controversial celebrity deaths you think deserve investigation? Or perhaps you have your own theories about some of the mysteries we've discussed today. Thank you for joining us on this journey through some of Hollywood's darkest chapters. Until next time, remember that even the brightest stars leave questions lingering in the shadows they cast.